We're going to get started in just another few minutes. If you'd like to come closer, please do so you can see the screen a little better. How's everyone doing today?
Good.
I'd like to thank for those of you coming today. My name is Foster Hughes. I'm Director of Parks and Recreation with the City of New Bern. And this is our second community engagement meeting for the Stanley White Recreation Center. We had one public input session in this building a little more than a month ago. Since that time, we've done some focus group meetings with individual groups, youth and community leaders and students and things like that to gather some input. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But one of the things I wanted to do is do a few introductions. Some of you may or may not know these folks. Some of my staff are here tonight with Parks and Recreation. James Bullock is in the back at the table. Jennifer Emmons is right up here at the front. Kelvin Hardesty is at the refreshment table, so if you haven't gotten anything, please help yourself. And Veronica Maddox is here as well. Back in late May, the Board of Aldermen appointed a Stanley White Recreation Center Advisory Committee, and I'm going to mention those names. And if you would come up here once I mention your name: Elijah Brown, Alderwoman Jamie Harris, Barbara Lee. Come on up. Talina Massey, Leander Morgan, Reginald Pender, Curtis Stewart, Bernard White, and James Woods. Please come up for just a second. I'm going to give these members an opportunity. If you'd like to say anything, please do so.
Good evening. If you have any questions concerning Stanley White that you do not want to ask Reggie or Foster, you can ask us. Most of y'all know us. You know the names that's on the list.
And I'm Barbara Lee. Good to see you all here. We're going to have us a recreation center soon. It's going to be awesome.
I'm Bernard White, a member of this board. We have what I consider a difficult time, but we're coming along pretty good. We have one more of these meetings I have, or two more? One more. Okay, you see what we have here, right? If it doesn't show up when it needs to be showing up, then you have nothing to complain about. My agreement was to have, and that's what I stood by, it being built back the same location. They would have elevated, and I talked to people in the community and told them that if they had a water problem, the water would be all on them, and a lot of them didn't care. So all I'm saying is that I normally go along with the majority. If you want something, you got to stand up for it. You can't expect somebody to stand up for you all the time. You need to stand up, go to the table and eat yourself. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say. It's just they're coming along with it. It may turn out to be super, but it's up to us. You know, we got the people come in explaining things to us how it's going to be done or whatever it is. In the last meeting we had, I voted no. Now the reason I voted no because I don't look at my computer every day. It's not that important to me to be there every day and every night, every morning. People do all that stuff. I don't stay on that. And I had the information and wouldn't even go to my phone. The information of the building. And my problem was that I wanted to look at it again because in that building, dealing with Stanley White, it was something missing. Now what was missing, I think I saw on the last email that came, and when I was looking at the room for recreation. So I didn't look at it good, but if it's in that last slot, all good. If it's not, it does not have the same amount of rooms that Stanley White had. I'm not saying size. Don't have. We had a meeting room, we had a recreation room, we had all the other rooms where we normally would meet. So that was one of my main reasons. When I got home, I went and looked, and I realized that it wasn't there. So other than that, Brother Brown.
Mr. White, can I just say something? Y'all keep saying that y'all had a meeting, the first meeting y'all had the last month. That's not true. I came out here to this location in spring of 2019, and there was people, there was a full room, and people, and they did, so this thing that y'all have y'all second meeting, that's not true. If y'all start from that meeting last, there was a meeting, I know, a year ago, because I came to it. I can't tell you the exact date.
Yep.
But it was right after the Duffield days of 2019.
Yep.
But during that Duffield day, they kept announcing that they're going to meet about Stanley White here. And I came. So please stop saying that the meeting just started last month.
Let me get it all over. Let me correct you while I'm here. The meeting started after we had gotten the Recreation Advisory Committee started. Those were the people that came in and spoke to us and explained to us the details of what might be going on, of how the Recreation Center would look. Before then, we've had meetings. That wasn't it. Those meetings was us gathering together to try to make sure that we had this in place. It was nothing like this one, and nothing like the one we had before this one. These here are steps and procedures of what may happen, and then you have gentlemen here that's going to give going to enlighten you more than I can about what we're talking about. So what I said was the truth.
So
I'm not good at lying.
In 2019, that was nothing.
2019 was a start. If we hadn't done that, then we might not even be here. But that wasn't the same.
What you're saying there.
Well, I'm probably not. It's probably my fault for not being able to explain it that well. But this is a different, like 1, 2, 3 steps. These are the final steps to try to close it out. We had the community come in and work with us so we can get to this point. And after we finally got to this point, I think they segment said that we have to have 3 more meetings. And these meetings was right after they established the Recreation Advisory.
Can I just add one thing? We're actually going to go through the schedule, and as we do, you'll have a chance to kind of give that comment, and I think that may explain a little bit about where we are in the process. Does that make sense?
I understand that there may be a process, but what I want to say is we've been having meetings, and I know there was a meeting in 2019 because I came, but everybody's making like that meeting meant nothing, and it wasn't about Stanley White. What we're doing now is about Stanley White, but before then wasn't about Stanley White. And I just want to clarify that when I came, that's all they talked about was Stanley White. And that was in the spring.
How you doing, cuz? I'm gonna help you out a little bit. what you're saying is exactly right. You are true. You're not lying about what you're saying. But when we say what he was trying to explain to you, we made a step a little closer to trying to get something done about that center, whether we're going to move it or whether we're going to keep it where it is. That's what the first meeting he's referring to. Not the very beginning, with the concerned citizens coming together, trying to do something or save Stanley White. And about the monies, making sure those monies stay at that building, or at that site, or at a new site. Trying to keep them honest. That's what that's all about. Now this is the second meeting with the consultant being added with us. That's all he was talking about. He wasn't trying to tell you that you was right or wrong. But he was right, you was right. But we have to put it in perspective, period.
I got a question. Victor Taylor. The last meeting that I attended, as Mr. White said, it was one meeting prior to this one. What day was that and what time was that? I'm leading to something now. Can y'all remember what day it was and what time it was?
August 31st.
I can't tell you because I was out of state.
Okay. What day of the week was that?
It was a Monday, August 31st.
August
Okay,
31st.
what time was that?
3:30 to 6:30.
Same time as this meeting was scheduled.
You want to get the subman action. That's my point that I say that. The reason why I say that is because a lot of people work.
Yeah.
A lot of people work. As the Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners, what they do is meet 1 month in the daytime and 1 month at night. So people can make the meeting. If you keep meeting at 3 o'clock, you're going to get the same result. You're going to get the same result. So it's one of those catch-22s, but now at the tailpipe street. You need to start meeting so people can go to work, because some people can't take off work to come out here and talk. It's important, but they need to get paid, especially with this pandemic. They can't take off work to come out here, sit 2 hours and talk about Stanley White when they got to feed the kids at home. So you might want to consider changing the meeting times so people can make it out here. But a lot of us out here is retired, even myself. Okay, so you might just want to consider if you want to change, want to get more results, change the time.
Well, somebody already said that he needed to talk. I haven't said nothing yet, but give me my little time. But Mr. Taylor, you're exactly right. I was asked that 5 times a day. And I just spoke to my daughter. She has a meeting with one of my daughter's teachers today, and that was one of her problems. It's too early. But my thing is, I'm going to say it real short, is this. Like I said in the last meeting, my concern is about getting that building erected on either site as soon as possible. And the other thing is, by being on the advisory board, my other point was that whatever we suggest, we want the Board of Aldermen to not just wash it over. We want them to consider it, period. The other thing is that we need to get the trust of the community back, because it's a very distrust between the city of New Bern and the community. Those are the 3 points. If we could do that, we could be on our way. And we have a slogan, build back better. We can't build back nothing if we don't come together. Period. And that's all I need to say.
Reginald, would you like to say anything?
Can you explain it to him? I wasn't here when you all started. I got here a little bit.
So we're giving our advisory committee members an opportunity to make any comments you'd like. If you'd like to, anything you'd like to say?
No, I'll wait.
Leander, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Foster. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking time out of your schedules to be able to come out. I see some of the same faces that we had here the first meeting that we had. I came in on Mr. Taylor's comments, and I definitely understand that sometimes you do have to change the route to get a different result. And at this point, what I would like to see is just the transparency of the advisory board, the board of aldermen, the community leaders, so that we can make sure that everybody has a clear understanding. It may be a little far-fetched to try to get everybody on the same page, but everybody needs to have a clear understanding and needs to have their voice heard. The bottom line is, this is going to have to be what the betterment is for the community, the betterment for the Stanley White Recreation Center, and what's going to sustain and take us 50 to 60 to hopefully 70 years from now. And we just can't be selfish, but we have to look toward the future, and we have to have that kind of forethought and that kind of vision to make sure that we may have to give in a little, compromise a little, give a little sacrifice if it's going to be for the common good. I'm not saying what those sacrifices are. I'm not saying what that compromise is. But we have to be able to look down the road to make sure that we leave something that's going to be viable, something that's going to be useful, and something that is going to be an asset to the community. Thank you.
Okay, at this time I'd like to introduce the members from the CPL team, and that's Rachel Nilsson, and she's going to be talking shortly, and Reggie Scales. And we also we're going to have a presentation from FEMA representatives today, so they are remote, they can hear everything that's being said, and the lead for that is Chelsea Klein. She will do in the presentation in a little bit, Robin Wharton, Michael Tucker, and Julie Barnes. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the process that we've gone through so far, and then I'm going to turn it over to Reggie. So as everyone knows, back in September of 2018, Hurricane Florence really devastated the city of New Bern, a lot of damage all over. And so basically the hurricane hit September 14th, 15th of 2018. We contracted with some consultants to help us go through the process with FEMA. And in October of 2018, we applied for the 428 mitigation grant for the Stanley White Recreation Center. In January of 2019, we received a letter of substantial damage to the Stanley White Recreation Center from the building inspector. And that's something that was required by FEMA. And basically from October 2018 through April of 2019, we had either weekly or bi-weekly meetings with FEMA. They would constantly request additional information from us, not only about the Stanley White Recreation Center project, but all the other damages that we received in New Bern. In May of 2020, the project was obligated by FEMA. May 15th, we sent out RFPs for the community engagement process, which is what we're doing right now to start the rebuild of the Stanley White Recreation Center. May 26th of this year, the Board of Aldermen established the Stanley White Recreation Center Advisory Committee. June 9th of this year, the Board of Aldermen established the Stanley White Recreation Center Fund, and that fund includes approximately $8,006,000, and a portion of those funds are from the FEMA grant, from the state of North Carolina, and insurance proceeds. That's what makes up all of that. And those funds are designated to rebuild the Stanley White Recreation Center. In June of this year, the Board of Aldermen voted to request a change of scope to move the Stanley White Recreation Center from the existing location at Henderson Park to the piece of property on 3rd Avenue. So what that triggered was an environmental assessment, which is what we're also going through as well, and what the FEMA representatives are going to talk about shortly. In July of this year, we contracted with CPL architects, engineers, and planning to do the community engagement portion for us, to give us cost estimates and to give us renderings of what the recreation center could look like. And so that first meeting that we had back in August or September, where we got that input from those 91 participants that came in and talked about what they'd like to see in a recreation center, we're going to cover all that in just a few minutes. July 21st of this year, we had our first Stanley White Recreation Center advisory meeting. And that committee meets on a monthly basis, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. At this time, I'd like to turn this over to Reggie Scales.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
As Foster said, my name is Reggie Scales. So before I jump into the actual slides, let me just a few comments and observations. Number one, we are architects, engineers, planners, and we come on board to complete a task. And so with this particular project, we work towards milestone. The milestone we're working towards right now is February, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. February 2021 is when we want to take the final plans, the cost estimate, and the programming to the Board of Aldermen for approval. Because if we can do that, then we can start the process of getting this thing reconstructed. That's key. So ultimately, we're here to get this thing rebuilt. All right. So that's first and foremost. The second thing is you got a committee, a steering committee that is effective, it is functioning, and they are driving forth the interest of the community at large. And we've seen that up close and personal. We've heard it at the various meetings we've attended, and certainly we heard it Tuesday night, which is why we restructured this meeting in response to the steering committee and some of the things that you want to see and you want to hear. And then the final thing, again, is there are no preconceived notions that I'm aware of, and Foster has stated this on numerous occasions, in terms of where this facility will be located. All right. What I want to talk to you about now is what we're doing as far as the process. By the way, I do want to make this interactive. If you have questions as we're going through it, stop me, stand up, let's talk. All right, we don't have to hold all the questions to the end of the process, at the end of the discussion. All right, just a quick review. Who's developing the project? That is the City of New Bern, specifically the City of New Bern Recreation Department. That is Foster Hughes and his team. All right, and as Foster said, they contracted with CPL. That's myself and Rachel. All right, I'm on the engagement piece. I am a transportation planner, recreation planner by training and background. And so the project has two phases. First phase is where we're in right now. The second phase will transition to the architecture phase, which is where Rachel comes in. She is a licensed architect. This is what we're doing here. Process. The process. Engagement. Again, we're in this process right now. The site design and master planning, we're about to transition into this particular space. The programming and concept design, that's where we're getting into understanding what we've heard from you, because you ultimately, to the neighborhood, the community is driving the process, what goes in the building, where it's to be located, and then ultimately the cost control and the financial modeling to make sure that what we're doing we can actually afford. Final piece, you just heard from the individuals who were on the steering committee. Any questions there? I assume we all know who they are. Actually, some are here. All right, the budget. And if you look at those line items there, the biggest line items is from the FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. After the hurricane hit, the city did apply for funds, as Foster has indicated. We awarded the amount of $5.6 million. That, in conjunction with insurance reimbursement and other state funds, the project has a total budget of a little more than $8 million for the rebuild. Now, as we walk through the process, we need to understand how that $8 million can be allocated on the existing site as well as alternate sites. Here's the schedule. You're going to see this 3 more times during our discussion. The first part of it, we are in right now. This is phase 1. And so let's talk about it. August 18, we had the initial meeting, Rachel and myself, with the steering committee. That's when we actually engaged. We went through the procurement process earlier. So we started the discussion at that time, and what we've laid out here is what was presented to the steering committee, and we talked about this is how we want to make this work. Now, if you look at, and I know it may be a little difficult to see, this piece, the public engagement, that was August 31st. That's what we mentioned here as a part of the process. After that, what we did is we collected the information in this room on August 31st. We took that information, kind of synthesized it, and pulled out the things that we heard over and over again. And we took that information and we actually held 4 small group or focus group meetings, test that information, and to pull in more information. All right, and the key is, and what we were working from is, not location right now, that wasn't key, but what goes in the building? What are the programs and the recreational activities that folks in the community need over the next 25, 40, 50 years? That's phase one, everything up to August to October. That's what we're working on right now. Once we work through that process and we get an understanding, you're going to hear, Rachel's going to go through with you in just a few minutes, some of the things that we've heard from the neighborhood and from the community about what goes in the building. Once we get that established, then we transition to the programming phase, which we start to look at, all right, this is what we can afford with the budget that I just showed you, and this is where we can leverage that money for highest and best use. And so what it comes down to is, what is the highest and best use? Existing site or an alternate site? And as we're working through this, the monies that FEMA is providing, they come with strings, and in terms of making sure that we're crossing all T's, dotting all I's in terms of looking at impacts. And those impacts are social, they are physical, they are economic impacts. And so we'll evaluate those in what's called an environmental assessment. And Chelsea Klein, who's with FEMA, is going to talk about that in just a moment in terms of that process. Now, in terms of where the facility ultimately is located, we have to go through and evaluate those impacts for each location. All right. Now, part of the process of the environmental assessment is what we're doing right now, which is pulling that information from the community and then putting it in, well, documenting it, but also making sure that we're moving in the right direction with the funds that we have available to us. I'll say a couple more words and then we'll come back around to this in just a bit. The programming piece and the conceptual design, probable cost, again, all of this, our focus is to get this thing to Board of Aldermen February 2021, complete this process so we can move to procurement contractors and getting this thing built. All right. Any questions thus far?
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Again,
and Mr. Victor Taylor.
Yes. Okay. Looking at that layout, you got community engagement.
Can I ask you to come up, because I'm not sure the folks online can hear you.
Okay. On that community engagement, you said that this is where you're getting the community engaged. Okay. That's what you just said. Also, Mr. Brown said that and Mr. White said we want to have another meeting. October the 22nd is the day. When are we going to have another meeting before October ends? And come November, you're talking programs, which is budget. When you start messing with the budget, your survey, your plan is already in place. You got to have it in place to start figuring out how much money you need to make things work. So if you're going to jump in November to program, that means you already got your mind made up what you want to do. So when are we going to have another meeting, and are we going to have the time schedule change? Because if we let the people know that it's 6 o'clock, somebody got to, like Ms. White, Ms. Morgan said, you're going to have to sacrifice staff. You're going to have to sacrifice some time. I know you get off work 5 o'clock, but you're talking about a community issue. We're going to have to pay them overtime or have them come in late. But we need to get the people engaged instead of these little small subgroups that I just heard about. We need to get the people say, look, this is when we're going to have our next meeting. On a weekday at 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Okay? Afford you the opportunity. You got to afford to pay for opportunity to make a difference. You got a subcommittee, but you ain't got a community engagement. Community engagement is not here. This is not community engagement. Half of the people in here is on the subcommittee. Okay? We need to get the community involved. And if you have to, I don't have a problem going get them. But you got to give them an opportunity to get out here. But once you go to the programming, as Mr. Reggie Scale said, it's going into the budget.
Well, not.
You said you're going to start talking about budget and programming, correct?
That's right.
So when you talk about budget, that means you got something in place. You can't talk about budget if you ain't got nothing in place.
So let me step back. And let's go back to this community engagement piece. Right now, we're at this meeting. Everybody got that? All right, the early October, and we're just, as we mentioned earlier this week, we're a little bit behind in schedule. But right now, we're in early October. Even though we're behind, we can still meet the alderman presentation or the alderman presentation. So, what's going to happen after this meeting is what we hear tonight, and again, we're here to listen. That's going to be taken back to the steering committee, and Foster, I don't know if you had a chance to talk to the steering committee.
I've talked with several,
yes.
We've got a few more to talk to.
So we're going to have a call meeting with the steering committee on Thursday week, next Thursday, to sit down at the table and just take some of the drawings and go through some of the concepts and thoughts and issues and opinions that we're talking about now. There will be another public engagement session, and if you can see that right here, the programming piece, yeah, that's important. But before we get into the concept design, hard concept design, and cost, I think that's what you're going to, there's going to be another meeting. Everybody good on that? Are we clear on that? So, let me make sure that I say this again. We're not trying to ram this thing through. We have spent literally since midsummer working our way through this. And in terms of the community and the neighborhood, I hear what you're saying. Just to tell you a few things that we have done, we understand COVID is a constraint right now, not just here but everywhere, globally. And so we tried to design a process such as this. You can see people are socially distanced. We've done a lot of these things online. For those who didn't have access to the internet, we did whole sessions where folks could come in and actually give their thoughts and opinions during those small group sessions that you mentioned, all right? We'll come back around to this in a bit, but in order to keep things going, let me tell you a little bit about how we have done this and what we started this process with. When we were hired by the City of New Bern, these are the core issues that we talked about, and this works. We've done this literally all over the Eastern Seaboard. I've done it all over the East and the Midwest. It works. The communication piece, and I know you say there are folks who may not be here, but early and often relationships, understanding what success is, and responsibility. Those are the 5 keys that we have pressed really hard through this process. Now, I will also say as a part of this, there are a number of issues that are out there that are not directly related to this project. We get that. Understand it. And so, but again, the goal is to get this thing rebuilt. And so one of the things that we're recommending is let's document some of those issues or concerns the community may have, and let's place those on a list, which when we come back, we go back to the schedule, in February when this thing goes to the Board of Aldermen, their final recommendation from the steering committee will include that list of issues or concerns that may be out there. Yes, sir. Can you give us your name?
My name is Anthony Raymond.
Anthony.
I want to know one thing. What is the real intent y'all plan on doing? What's the intent what you plan on doing? Because I'm going to be down there 2 or 3 times. It's going to make sense. Y'all went out and bought land before you really made the opposition where you going to put that. Then you say, well, we're going to put it over here. It just don't make sense. What is your intent? If you're going to say the same thing over and over, and you already got your mind where you're going to go it, we don't need to be here. What is the real intent? Where are you going to go?
The intent is to replace the facility.
Is to replace it there?
A better facility.
No. Is you going to replace it there, or are you going to move it somewhere else?
Well, if you look at the schedule right here, once we complete this discussion, tonight we're ready to begin to talk about location. That's the last item on the agenda tonight, where it's going.
All right, I'll go along with that. We'll wait for that. Heard it?
Yes, ma'am.
All those things.
What was your last name again?
I'm a Rainer.
Rainer.
Okay, my name is Barbara Sampson.
Barbara Sampson.
Well, I've been to a number of these meetings, but I look at it like a judge and a jury. That is judge to the jury. These are only facts I want you to look at. So they're going to set the stage on what's going to happen. They tell all the negatives that being Stanley White being being on Chapter Street. They're not telling it in the positive. They give us all the positive, or being over there, they say 3rd Avenue, I call it East Boulevard, Fort Todd area. And then I have a problem with, after we get all this talking together, do all this, then we're going to go to the Board of Aldermen. They're going to make the decision. How can a person make a decision, a group of people make a decision when they already got their minds made up where they want to be anyway? That's not fair within itself. And FEMA gave the money originally for it to be built back to where it's at. And after we got the money, then the Board of Aldermen decided that they're going to go and rewrite it and get the money so they can put it there and say that it's going to be bigger. One thing I learned in life, bigger now is not always better.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move on. The question, why are you here? Why are you here? Exactly what we're hearing tonight. Why are you here? And I can't say it enough. Decisions has not been made. The comments that you're providing will be taken seriously. All right? Why are we here? Got to hear from everybody. We're not checking a box. I don't do business that way. Just so we're clear. All right. Let's hear from FEMA. Chelsea Klein. She's going to talk to you about the monies that FEMA invested and how the process that we need to go through to make sure the very things that you're talking about here are heard. So Chelsea, are you on with us?
Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so my name is Chelsea Klein, and I'm the Environmental Planning and Historic Preservation Advisor for FEMA for the disaster declaration for Hurricane Florence in North Carolina. And what I want to highlight for everybody in this presentation is that and to reiterate what Foster and what Reggie have been saying, is that the decision has not been made. The current FEMA approved project is for demolition and elevation in the existing location. The City of New Bern applied for a 428 project, and since they have been awarded that money, they can choose to do other things with that money. So they have the $8.6 million, and they can decide if they want to rebuild it in that location or if they can decide if they want to build it in another location. The city has asked us to evaluate whether or not relocating this building in a new location is practicable, and that's what all of this process is for, and that's what all of these meetings are for, is to go through that process. And ultimately, FEMA and the City of New Bern will decide where the new Stanley White Recreation Center will go. Jennifer, it's not letting me advance the slide. Would you please advance the next slide for me? Thank you. So, as a part of the Federal Emergency Management Program, there is an Office of Environmental Planning and Historic Preservation. And we are here to help reduce the impact that disasters and emergency management decisions and operations have on the nation's cultural and natural resources. Next slide, please, Jennifer. So, the mission of OEHP is that we are here to provide technical assistance and guidance on all FEMA programs, so specifically in this case as it pertains to the Public Assistance Program. We are here to make sure that we integrate the protection and the enhancement of the environmental and historic cultural resources on all of our programs and activities, and we coordinate all of these environmental and historic preservation activities with our regional environmental officers. So there are 10 regions in FEMA. They have 10 regional environmental officers, and all final decisions such as this environmental assessment process for this Stanley White building, the regional environmental officer will ultimately sign the decision, either a finding of no significant impact or a record of decision, depending on the outcome of this process. Next slide, please, Jennifer. So FEMA is a component agency of Department of Homeland Security, and so DHS has given FEMA the operating mechanisms as to how we apply the National Environmental Policy Act. The NEPA, as it's known, requires federal agencies to use all practicable means within their authority to review all projects and make sure that we consider other essential considerations of the natural and human environment, including the social, economic, and other needs of present and future generations. All of the environmental planning requirements of NEPA are implemented through the FEMA Management Directive 023-01. Next slide, please, Jennifer. So, as a role of FEMA, DHS says that FEMA shall instill environmental stewardship and preservation of historic and cultural resources. These sustainable goals are meant to be complementary with emergency management and other activities at FEMA. We are here to promote the development of resiliency in communities after disasters in light of multiple disasters in one location like North Carolina has seen over the years, sea level rise, climate change, and other impacts that can threaten the human environment. These are important considerations when preparing to, responding to, and recovering from and mitigating future potential hazards in the U.S. after disasters have happened. Next slide, please, Jennifer. So what is the purpose of NEPA? So any federal action must take into consideration the NEPA process. That means every single FEMA project for Hurricanes Florence, Michael, Dorian, Isaias, all are reviewed against the National Environmental Policy Act. We are here to make sure that we document the federal agency's decision-making process. I want to highlight again that this is a process and no outcome has been decided as of yet. We want to make sure that we encourage the harmony between man and his environment, promote efforts that prevent or eliminate future damage to the environment or biosphere, and stimulate the health and welfare of men. And we want to make sure that we enrich the understanding of the ecosystems and natural resources important to the nation, and that this is all done in accordance with guidance from the Council on Environmental Quality, which has the implementing regulations for NEPA. Next slide, please. So what is an environmental assessment? So there are typically, most of the FEMA projects don't trigger an environmental assessment, but oftentimes relocations do. As such, we need to go through the environmental assessment process. And these are used to determine if there's a significant environmental impact that will recur as a result of a FEMA action or a federally funded action. So in this case, there seems to be particular significant social concerns about the relocation of this project, which is why we are going through this process and why we are taking that extra step to document our decision-making actions through the environmental assessment process. And these public meetings are a part of that process. Next slide, please, Jennifer. Excuse me. So what are the factors of an environmental assessment? So we have to address and document those areas where there's a potential to significantly affect the environment. And in this case, the environment is defined as the human and the social and the natural environment. And we have to provide the public an opportunity for involvement and input in the decision-making process in accordance with the law. That is why this meeting, as well as the numerous meetings that have happened before, and there are going to be a series of meetings afterwards, are ongoing. Then, like I said before, the EA can conclude with one of two decision documents, and that'll either be a finding of no significant impact, and then the regional environmental officer will sign that, and then FEMA will proceed with the clearing of this project, or it will issue a notice of intent to prepare an environmental impact statement. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I'm going to walk you quickly through the National Environmental Policy Act process. So like I said before, there is a congressional mandate that all federal agencies must consider the effects of their actions on the quality of the human environment. So that's why we are documenting this decision-making process for the relocation, since we were made aware of the social concerns about the relocation of this project. Next slide, please. So the environment, like I said before, is not just the bugs and bunnies as people think about. We also look, the biological. We also look at the physical, the social, the cultural, and the economic. Next slide, please. It does not support environmental preservation at all costs. Next slide, please. And it requires us to consider the environmental values as well as technical and economic considerations. So in some instances, there may not be enough available land for a relocation to occur, and so that's an economic consideration that we cannot avoid, and so that's why some buildings would stay in place rather than be relocated. Next slide, please. It's an interdisciplinary approach to project planning and decision making. We don't make this decision in a vacuum. We will be consulting with the State Historic Preservation Office. We will be consulting with the numerous tribes that may have had ancestral ties to this land in the past. We will be consulting with the Fish and Wildlife Service on effects to threatened and endangered species. There will be coordination with the Corps of Engineers in regards to floodplain and permitting. And since New Bern is in a CAMA county, there will also be coordination with the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality Coastal Planning Department as well. Next slide, please. So like I said, these are some of the laws that we will be addressing in this environmental assessment process, the National Historic Preservation Act. So any buildings that are older than 50 that we may be demolishing, we'd have to document that decision-making process of those effects for that demolition. All the ground disturbing activities associated with new construction, we will have to consult with the tribes and the State Historic Preservation Office on those activities. If there are any threatened and endangered species acts that if there's any threatened and endangered species that may be impacted by this action, we will be consulting with the Fish and Wildlife Service on that. FEMA also has to document its decision-making process as in accordance with our funding on how this project may or may not impact floodplains and wetlands and environmental justice. We also have to look at the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Resource Recovery Conservation Act, and like I said, the Coastal Zone Management Act, which is triggered under FEMA in North Carolina. Next slide, please. So a part of the environmental assessment process, one, we have to consider reasonable alternatives, which is why we are hosting these meetings. So what are the alternatives to demolishing and elevating this structure in place? So this is where the city came to FEMA and asked, is there an alternative that's reasonable where we could relocate this building outside the floodplain? And we are here to explore that alternative in these meetings. Next slide, please. We will also have interagency communication, like I said before. Next slide, please. We are here to solicit public input. So like I said, and like Reggie has said, this is one of the many meetings that have happened and some of the meetings that will go on forward. And when the environmental assessment is complete, there will be an opportunity for the FEMA to review it and comment on it as well. So this decision will not be made in a vacuum. Once the EA is done, that CPL is preparing, it'll be reviewed by the public and your comments will be taken in and documented as a part of that process. Next slide, please. Like I said, we'll be documenting this decision-making process through the environmental assessment process. Next slide, please. And NEPA is triggered whenever a federal agencies, whether you're getting a license, permit, or in this case, grant reimbursement for a project is triggered for more than $1. And so in this case, we have 8.6 million, as you have seen. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So, due to the location inside the floodplain, per 44 CFR 0.9, the Executive Order on Floodplain Management, FEMA must evaluate practical alternatives to locations outside the floodplain. The reason why we do this is because we want to protect federal investment, we want to build resiliency in the community, and we want to minimize the risk of this happening again in this community. So I have heard from the community members that this building has been made unusable for the last 2 years now. So potentially with relocating outside the floodplain, this type of damage would not occur again. And then that allows you guys to continue the use of the building even though it will not be affected by flooding in the future. Next slide, please. So as you can see right now, here is the FEMA insurance rate map that shows you the location of the current building, that red dot. That is the current location of the Stanley White Recreation Center, and you can see that is in a flood zone. And as such, FEMA has awarded the project for the demolition and rebuilding in place, but it's going to have to be elevated, I cannot even read it, 11 feet. So as you know, there can be challenges with access if you have to elevate a building 11 feet, and there's going to be multiple stairs and ramps that go around that structure. Also, since it's in a CAMA zone, there's going to be additional requirements with drainage and permitting in association with that reconstruction. So from what I understand, the location on your lower left corner is where the proposed location is, and as you can see, that location is outside a FEMA mapped floodplain, which means that there is a potential that should this building be relocated there, that it would minimize the risk from future flooding on a similar event. Next slide, please. So, should we relocate the building? I know that the CPL consultants have been asking what would the community like to see at the old location. So since if FEMA relocates this building outside of the floodplain, there are limitations on what can be done at the old location in accordance with 44 CFR 80.19. So the space will have to be left into perpetuity as what is called open space. And it's meant to maintain the natural and the natural and beneficial functions of floodplains. So what could stay there are outdoor recreational activities, anything that would enhance wetlands management, natural preserves, cultivation, grazing, camping, those kind of things, unimproved, unpaid parking lots, and other uses that FEMA may deem compatible with this part. I understand there has been questions about a gazebo or an amphitheater being out there. So next slide, please, Jennifer. So there are limitations on what can go in there. So as long as it's not a walled building, that facility may be able to be rebuilt in that location. And as you can see, we cannot put these types of properties in that location should FEMA relocate this property. Next slide, please. So once again, I want to highlight that again, that, you know, per the executive order on floodplain management, this structure is located in a floodplain, and FEMA has to take a hard look at making sure that if we invest $8.6 million in the reconstruction of this building in the floodplain, that we did not exhaust all alternatives looking for opportunities to relocate this property outside of the floodplain. Sometimes we realize that it cannot be avoided, and there are some instances where we have had to rebuild certain facilities back in the floodplain, and then when we do that, that's where elevation or floodproofing can help to provide some of that protection to the facility or minimize that risk of flooding again in the future. Next slide, please. So I want to highlight again that this is all a part of the public involvement process of the EA process. And FEMA is going to use all relevant information and make our decision open and transparent. These public meetings are a part of this process. There will be more chances for public involvement in the future. And then, like I said, the copies of the environmental assessment, once completed by CPL, will be available to the public for them to comment on prior to FEMA finalizing its decision as to the relocation or not of this facility. Next slide, please. So that's all I have. So I can't see real well, but Jennifer, are there any questions?
Yes, there's one.
Yes, there's one. Okay.
Okay. All right, I don't have questions unless I have an observation.
Jennifer, I can't hear her at all. Can you have her come closer?
Yeah, we'll bring, just come into the mic.
Okay.
Well, I don't have a question, but I have an observation. I was saying when you're saying it's in a floodplain. I know it's in a floodplain, but the thing about it is, I know that even though something can be in a floodplain, I know they can fix it up so that instead of the water coming to where it's located at, they can have the water go somewhere else. And how I know this because I went into that Riverfront Convention Center that we build up every time it flood out. So now they put something in place that now that the water can't just come up there anyway, because they fix it so that the water can go in a different direction somewhere else. And so that's what we need to do. And then the place on 3rd Avenue, we already know what time of day that is. When they built that place, and you can see how high it is, they made it so that all the water can come right down to Stanley White. So instead of the water coming there to Stanley White, send it on News Boulevard.
Any other questions for the FEMA representative?
Okay.
My name is Anthony Wright. Again, they have discussed it that it would cost millions of dollars to keep that place in the same product because of the insurance. But what do you say about that?
I'm sorry, what do I say about that?
I'm asking about the insurance thing. They say it costs so many $1 million to keep that building in the same place.
So as a condition of the FEMA grant, if the structure was damaged by flood, by regulation, that facility is required to obtain and maintain flood insurance from the National Flood Insurance Program for the life of that building. So the city has expressed their concerns to FEMA, from what I understand, that the cost to insure a building at this location is going to be significantly higher than if they were to relocate outside the floodplain.
Okay, about the state
Did that answer your question?
No, because by the state of North Carolina, it says if you got a building above 12 feet above flood level, your insurance is going to be the same as the person that got a house next door to you at the same level. But if it's below the 12 feet, it costs a lot more, and it cannot be raised. Ask me, how do I know? I done went through that. I done went through it. When I first built my house on the National Court Avenue, they told me if I keep it at the same site, it'll be higher. So the girl across the street, her insurance costs a lot more than mine for flood insurance. Mine's way cheaper. So I don't know how he get up here and tell a lie like that and saying that it's gonna go up more. And got all these people around here believing this, that the insurance is gonna cost a whole lot more to keep the building right where it's at. Once you get that building up to a certain height, the insurance is gonna cost the same. And so they lying because they don't want to put the building back. I'm gonna be straight up with you. They don't want to put the building back in a black neighborhood. That's the whole point of blacks about it. I heard one of the guys say on the community that he hates driving back in that black community, the black community. And it's not right. I think it should go back in the same place. That's the only thing we have back there that can say it's part of us. That's what I got to say.
So elevating the building in place will allow for some reduction in their flood insurance costs. That is correct, because they are now built above the base flood elevation. However, that being said, if they were to relocate the structure outside of the floodplain, their insurance premiums would be significantly lower because they are then outside of the floodplain altogether. But I hear your concern, sir, and we'll document that.
We have someone else coming up as well.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Juanetta Tolliver, and I just have a comment. My comment is, the city knew from the very beginning, before it was actually built, how flooding of an area it was to put the Stanley White Gym in. But they put it there just to say, we'll give it to the black people in this community to keep things going well with them and keep their miles down. Now that we've been hit, we're going to be feeling left out because they're not doing their part. It was their decision to put it there. They knew from the beginning it was a flooding area, but yet it was there. So why make us feel bad about the decision that the city made? They have to be responsible for the decision that they made. That's all I'm saying. There you go.
Any other comments or questions for the FEMA representative? Okay, so we can switch back to
You're welcome.
the other. Thank you, Chelsea. All right. All right, so we go back to the schedule. Now we want to spend some time talking about what we've heard from the neighborhood, what we've heard from the community about the activities and what actually goes in the building. So that said, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you. So as we mentioned earlier, through our schedule and the process that we've been going through, we've been having a number of these focus group sessions, as well as a previous drop-in session. That community drop-in session, we had 91 people sign into that session. That was held in this room on August 31st from 3 to 7 p.m. The intent was to be able to capture as many people as we could, both during the day hours for people who had evening commitments and also those later hours for people who did work a normal 9 to 5. I've got some results I'll show you shortly here. We had 4 focus group sessions. Those were held virtually with an option to attend in person and view that virtually as well. We captured people's thoughts over the phone. Those sessions were all recorded as well, and we did some polling through those sessions. Those sessions were held with a group of community leaders. Those people were identified in part by the committee. We looked at the people who signed in, who they were representative, who those groups were that were represented on the people who came at that first session to make sure that those people who were here at that first session and who had comments and wanted to continue to comment were given that opportunity. So the community leaders was our first one. We met with a number of local nonprofits. We had a session with city staff, planning, parks and recreation, and we had a 4th one that was focused on youth. So the group of people who will be using this session for the decades and decades, or using the center for the decades to come. We had approximately 33 plus staff were invited to those focus group meetings. We had 19 people attend those 4 focus groups. We have a survey that is actually still live right now, and there are paper copies here. That was an online survey, but paper copies were dropped off in multiple locations throughout town, and we've collected over 50 paper copies of that survey. So again, if you haven't taken that, please feel free to grab one of those, and you can either take it online or return a paper copy to us. So like I said, we've had 68 returned copies of that survey. At our first drop-in session, one of our stations was 3 boards that showed pictures of different types of programs and activities. Again, like Reggie mentioned, we were focusing on what goes in the building. What do you want to see in the building? What do people want to participate in? The results of those we can see up here. So court spaces, basketball spaces, volleyball, general court space was the most popular item. Every person was given 3 dots to vote however they chose on those 3 boards. Court spaces, fitness, cardio, weight rooms, classroom type spaces. On this board we had wellness type spaces, lounge, maker spaces, walking track was one of those top vote getters, media room, a place for computers, for learning labs, and child indoor play area. A stage, game room, history, art gallery, and climbing wall. We also had an opportunity for people to write in things that they didn't see listed there. We had comments about a pool. We had comments about learning center, polling location, a number of comments about it being an emergency shelter. History, make sure that the history is shown in this facility. Emergency generator, meeting spaces, transitioning to event spaces, community pantry, trade programs, election site, again, emergency shelter, and boxing. So one of the things that as we start to move into this next stage, as we start to look at the programming, is we want to understand and we look at what types of spaces and activities can all happen within the same room. How can this facility be multi-use, flexible, and adaptable, not just for today's needs, but for the needs for 30, 40 years from now. As we start to look at that, these were all of the spaces that had 15 or more votes in that first session. So in that first line, we have the courts and we have the stage. Again, those are types of spaces that can be combined in one. We have cardio and weight room, very important to the community. Meeting and classroom spaces, those can be game rooms, media rooms, other just general conference meeting rooms and classrooms, and then a walking track. In our focus groups, our discussions were, it was more of a discussion than just a general voting. So we got to hear their thoughts. Spaces and needs within the building. Wanted space for education, great for families. Again, excited about the education component. Excited about a potential test kitchen, demonstrations, teaching. Understanding that food insecurity is a big issue. How can this facility accommodate the needs of the today and in future generations? And then potential of access to parts of the building at later hours for rental and community events. For outdoor spaces, one of the things we did is we pulled those focus groups and asked them, if this facility is relocated, what would you like to see at Henderson Park? Knowing that Henderson Park will always remain a park. It will always be dedicated to that specific use. Kids gardens, community gardens. People want a water feature, a small amphitheater, a picnic shelter, a larger shelter for some family events, and then looking at stormwater as an educational tool. Our youth focus group, we got some really, really great feedback from a lot of the youth in the community. They wanted to see art stations, quiet study spaces, an updated kitchen, after-school activity spaces. They mentioned needing space to hang out after school, places to do their homework, to get together with their friends. Whether that was groups of kids coming together and working on projects together, having activities to do hands-on, or just space to find a quiet area to do their homework. They noted public pool, they noted a bike park, a skate park as options for what they would want to see at Henderson Park. In the survey, we've received some very similar results. So again, what activities would you participate, or what activities did you participate in at Stanley White Recreation Center when it was still in use? The highest counts we got back were on court space, activity rooms, and game rooms. What's important to you in the design of a new rebuilt center? Well-lit outdoor areas, safety and security, and activities and programs that were offered. What spaces would you like to see in a new recreation center? Community meeting spaces, catering, teaching kitchen, a media room with computers, walking track. And we had, because this was a paper version, we had a lot of people who checked every single item on that list. So we know that there's a lot of popularity in all of those different programs that are offered, and making it as adaptable and flexible as possible to offer as much as possible. In terms of programs and activities in a rebuilt center, computer classes, cooking and nutrition classes, senior activity spaces, fitness, dance classes, and again, some combination of the rest of the items that are up on that list as well.
Yeah.
And I will say there is a board over there that has some of these results if you want to go take a look later.
Can I ask a question?
Yes?
You put all those events up there that you were talking about doing, right? How many of them are going to be free to us for the kids to come free? How many might charge money for them to come to our stuff? How much it's going to cost? Like when they first built the NYCA, it's supposed to be free for the poor income. Now it's hard for one of the poor income to get there. So how is this shit going to be free for everybody to come to it? You said all the events are there. Go to computer class. Is it going to be free for them? Will it be a billing for that? Will it be a charge for that? If it's going to be a charge for that, that's just a waste for some kids because they ain't got no money to go there. What would it be? You don't know.
Foster, do you want to take that one? On fees, your fee structure?
So I think I heard this right. You're wanting to know what the fee structure would be with the new recreation center. It will not be any different than what the Stanley White Recreation Center was.
But the old recreation, they have all this stuff, so when it calls for one, for they go, each one of the kids. I recommend that y'all build the gym back and put the other stuff where y'all want to put it at, and then it'll be okay. Nobody will be saying nothing. If you want to do that, then it won't be nothing said. You have a separate building for all that stuff. Instead of trying to put something in one location, it causes a lot of conflict with people with traffic and stuff. People want to go to the gym, put the gym right back. Right now, y'all call it confusion. The only thing y'all telling me right now, we're going to do it this way. Hell with the rest of us. Excuse my friend, but that's what I'm saying. We're going to build it this way. And that's not fair to the people that's coming out here to meet. Y'all been going, y'all remind the people that talk a lie back and forth. Back and forth. Tell the truth. Don't lie. Tell the truth. The truth will make it free for everybody. But if you're going to lie about it until we lie.
But I'm going to tell you something that's true. If you want to put two buildings here, they're going to be twice the money.
Well, that's their problem.
No, it ain't their problem. It's our problem because it's our neighborhood.
Well, we put it back in our neighborhood.
It's not their problem. It's our problem.
You got a house full of
now, if you want two separate buildings, then you want to increase the tax rate.
Bring it, Tank. No decision has been made on anything. This is a proposal to show you what people said they wanted, not the city. The city didn't say they wanted this. When they put those boards up here the last time everybody was out here,
and I said it
and 91 people voted on those things. These are the things that the community said they want in that building. Not me, not Bernard, not nobody on this advisory board, not Foster, not the CP&L. We are not the ones who said we wanted these things. The community said that's what they want in their building.
Because the people...
The community said that's what they want in the building.
Okay, that's what the community said. Let's say what I'm saying. The people really was confused about all this money. Y'all say you had to come up with this insurance each year. How many of those items did you vote?
Listen, you're trying to mix apples and oranges. You got to either say oranges or apples.
It's oranges.
No, it's not. It's not, Rain. It's not. No, it's not.
Hey, man.
If you build a building back where it is and you elevate it 12 feet,
and they got to go that much more.
That's the floodplain over there.
Right.
If you elevate that building at all, where is the water going to run to?
Where it going to run?
Where is it going to run?
First of all,
ask the question. Where's it going to run?
First of all, if you open the ditches up properly, and so the water can run where it needs to go, you would have that problem. Because that $1 million y'all spent back when they were on my house to help pull that water off the city land. That's the first thing. The next thing, what do you want to know about next?
Yeah, let me. I know that, you know.
Water's going to go where it needs to go anyway.
Let's refocus just a bit here. So as we look at this right now, what you've just seen, the presentation was, as Mr. Wood said, that's what the community said they wanted. No preconceived notions. So the next part of the discussion, let's see if we get back to the schedule here. The next part of the discussion actually goes to the schedule, what we're talking about here. So let's talk about the location, because that's kind of the elephant in the room. So we're ready to transition to that discussion. Now, the challenge I would give you as we have the discussion is really you should be thinking of the year 2070, not 1976. And let me tell you why. We designed these facilities for about a 50-year plus life cycle, right? The needs of the neighborhood and the community are vastly different today than they were in 1976. Can I get an agreement on that? Does everybody agree? Okay. I've heard a number of comments, and again, I'm giving you what I believe is just a very clear overview. I am objective. I have no dog in this fight, so to speak. That's why they brought us in. And so, as you look at, as we start to discuss the location, think of it in context of what should be there. What do your children, your children's children, and your children's children are going to need? That's number one. The second piece of it is that word sustainability, all right? And that has a number of different meanings, but the big thing is, can that facility withstand future storms? And we'll have them, all right, and not have to shut down as the current facility is. Can that facility be designed to reflect the needs of the neighborhood, whether it be security, whether it be, this is where it's always been. All those issues that are kind of bubbling up and around. So that really is a challenge for each of us as we look at this. And each of the neighborhood should be looking at it in context of what you need rather than what you have. And truly, if you do want to honor Stanley White and his legacy and what he brought to the community, that forward-looking thinking it really is necessary for the neighborhood. All right. So with that being said, if you look at the screen here, and you can see the existing location, and Chelsea Klein with FEMA had an excellent graphic of how the floodplain is situated, but you can see the existing location, you can see the apartment complex here, you can see a proposed location which is just south of these units here, and then you see the main boulevard here. And so a lot of the comments that we've heard have dealt with location as it relates to the neighborhood, it being accessible. Again, security is something I've heard on a number of occasions, over and over again, in terms of folks having their children feel safe. The other piece of this is you've heard the FEMA rep talk about some of the constraints of rebuilding in the floodplain, but also the opportunities of shifting to other locations. So my final comment on this is, as we have gone through these workshops and meetings, what we pulled out is what the community wants. That's what you just reviewed. And the question again for the community is, do you want less in the current location, or do you want more, in essence, looking forward to 2070 and beyond at an alternate location? So And again, not trying to sway anybody, but just trying to give you an objective overview. So, with that being said, comments, and what I would ask you to do, if you're going to provide comments, we ask that you, no hearsay, in terms of what somebody else told you or what you think. Just keep it specific to your thoughts and opinions and values, right? Sure.
So one quick note I want to mention, we talked a little bit about what this next step looks like, what the programming is. So as you've seen, we have a finite budget. We have the $8 million, and that is a project budget. That includes other costs that need to happen, equipment costs, things like that, that go into getting this building up and running. So, as Reggie mentioned, we look at, okay, what can we afford with that budget? That comes down to a square foot number. That comes down to a size. We know, based on the need to elevate this building at the current location, that there is a cost associated with that, with the site piece of it. What that does is it makes the building smaller. And we know that that cost is not necessarily the case at a proposed location, a different location, that you're able to keep that on a more level field, and you're able to enter direct. You have less structural costs associated, less site costs associated. So part of what we do at this next meeting next week, part of what we do moving forward when we look at the types of spaces based on what you've told us that you want to see, what the community wants to see in here, is we look at those. We look at how those come together. We look at how those add up and how we get to the finite budget. So we're working backwards from that budget and forwards from what the community has said to come somewhere in the middle to the best possible outcome for you all.
Okay, and Chelsea Klein, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, again, Victor Taylor. Number one, I don't know if Chelsea has been to New Bern yet, but if she have not been to New Bern, she needs to come to New Bern. The reason why I say that, because we went down to the Board of Alderman meeting, I don't know what month it was, and they had a FEMA rep to speak. And I listened. When I go to the Board of Alderman meeting, whether I was on the dais or downstairs, when I go to the meeting, I listen. I don't be talking or thinking about anything else. I listen. And what I heard that FEMA man say, that he represented the city for the last year or year and a half, but has yet to go on to Stanley White. How you gonna represent us, and you're in Raleigh, and you ain't made 1 2-hour trip down here to see Stanley White, but you're talking about what's good for Stanley White? Right then I shut him off. I don't know if y'all heard it, but I shut him off. Because you can't represent me if you don't know why you're representing what you're representing. He did not, he said that Stanley White was on 40 acres. Did y'all hear that? I don't think Stanley White on 40 acres. So that told me again, he had not been to Stanley White. So I don't know if Chelsea's been down here or not, but if she haven't, she needs to be down here sometime. The second part, you want to build it back. Better, great, outstanding. But when you turn that first piece of dirt, it's a done deal. When they turn that first piece of dirt, it is a done deal wherever they start turning. So the decision needs to be made before they turn that dirt. The second thing is, the third thing, thank you, Ms. Lewis, is this a pointer, sir? Can I use your pointer? Because I'm going to show you what I feel about this proposal. And then you all can come up with your own opinion. Okay, this is the proposed area, okay? This is where it is now, okay? This is indigo red. This is 3rd Avenue. Everyone that has a house in here has a backyard, most of them. I got a backyard in my house. My backyard needs to be right behind my house. It don't need to be in Taberna because I don't live in Taberna. I need my backyard right out my back door. So when I go outside, or my dog is outside, or my grandkids are outside, I look outside, they right there. If you got the proposed area here, still got Henderson Park here, you still got baseball here, you still got all this area here, the kids coming from here to play down here, that's a long walk. Someone told me it's an easy walk. You're talking that little girl age right there. If she walked all the way down there, that's a long walk. Kids get in trouble real fast when the adults are not there. If I tell my kid, my granddaughter, to go to the playground, she walks down 3rd Avenue, which is supposed to be 25, but how many people drive 25? If they walk back here, it's all wooded. I worked with the state for a lot of years. There's a lot of pedophiles in the community, not just our community. All over Craven County, Jones County, Pamlico County, Eastern North Carolina. If kids are walking here every day, all day, who's to say there's not a pedophile sitting back here on Queen Anne just watching? Whoever came up with this proposal was not thinking well. Back in the days, when Bernard White and myself and some more other board members, we decided to give Indigo this property to build their 80 units, first phase. They talking about a second phase at that time. The second phase we're gonna go back here, which is the people that's from Dufferfield know that it's Sand Hill area, right back here. We also gave them that property for the second phase.
And just so we're clear, that is in the floodplain. Just that property is in all of that property.
All that property, it never hardly ever flooded. Even when the last storm, Florence, that area didn't flood that way. Okay. The whole city flooded. The whole city. That's a 50-year flood.
All right. So we go by the FEMA floodplain maps. That's our reference.
Okay. Okay. All right. We'll go with that. So I just think this is a bad position. If you want to put another phase, I would say, I talked to some people in Louisiana where it floods all the time. What they did, they raised their school. And they put underneath their schools some park benches affixed to the concrete where they did after school programs. They did all other items underneath the building. If it flooded, it didn't hurt nothing but some park benches. They still had school in those schools at the top. So I think this is a real bad idea. First, it's close to Broad Street. Okay? Vehicle traffic and foot traffic never mix.
And let me just say,
that's my opinion.
Let me just say one thing. I know a lot of folks want to talk, so if we can ask you to keep it to 5 minutes or less. So what I've heard from you thus far, the FEMA rep needs to visit the site, number one. The distance is an issue for kids who are walking throughout and frequenting the facility. And the third thing is we need to look at alternative designs from across the country for similar structures in the floodplain. Is that correct?
The main number one is the location. The proposed location is dead wrong. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Other comments on location?
Yeah. The only thing I say is go back to the same.
You have to come up to.
What I'm going to say is that it needs to go right back into the same place. I know some of y'all are stuck in the head by saying it'll be better somewhere else. If you put the building back in the same place and you want to add classrooms, other places, wherever you want them at, feel free to do that. The money was set up directly to put the building back there to start with. The whole city of New Bern had flooded in the 50s. It went all the way from Pleasant Hill all the way out there towards 55 to out there where Pilgrim Chapel Church at. If the water come in from the east, it's gonna flood even again. Ain't no question about it. Hazel come in that way. that storm that flooded, it come in that way. But people need to do some understanding and start doing some study. If you weren't here in the last 20 years or last 30 years, then go to the gym and play ball, you don't know what you're talking about no way, because you was not here. You got to be living in New Bern and been here for a while to know exactly what's going on. Hey, when election time next year come, y'all look at my name. Please look at it. It will be there. Guaranteed, it will be there. Some of this stuff is going to have to be changed. That's all I'm going to say. Somebody got to be saying, if FEMA put that building for it to be better, put it there. Don't underneck somebody else, then buy some land somewhere else, then make a decision. We're going to put it here to make it better. Where's it going to be better at? Like my man said, he got a back porch, he want to go on his back porch. You send your children way down there, one get hit, get killed. That's when I said, well, we should not have did it there. We should have done a better thing. And that was a darn lie right there from the get-go, because they don't give a darn. Put it in the right place. Back at the same place.
Any other comments?
I got one thing real quick, I gotta go.
Let's go ahead, dude.
What Mr. Brown said, Mr. Brown said there's a disconnect with the community and the city. If you look around, we have no city officials in this meeting at all. Not even the mayor, none of the aldermen. When Bernard and I was alderman, if something was going on in the community, we were there. You have no representation from the city other than PIO. Other than that, no elected official from the city here today. All right? You have a county, which is County McCabe, but there's a disconnect because they need to be here to represent you. If they want to hear your needs and your wants, they should be here. One of them, at least the mayor on down, somebody should be here.
Okay. All right. With that being said, do we have any elected officials here, just to make sure we're clear?
We have one county commissioner.
We have a county commissioner here, okay. Yeah. All right. Any other comments at this point? All right. Then what we will do is talk about next steps. Okay, just you can go on. All right, so what will happen now? We'll take the information that we have received before, place it in a fashion that we can discuss it with the steering committee. That meeting will occur next Thursday. After that meeting, then we'll, as Rachel has discussed, we'll move into the programming piece. We have not made a decision. Let me just say that again. A decision has not been made. So what we would like to do is to make sure everybody is aware of process and where things stand right now. If you want to get in touch with me or Rachel or certainly Foster, the website is there and available. See me after the meeting. I'll be glad to talk to you. I know there's a couple of you I want to talk to anyway after this discussion. And if we, Foster, do you have anything else at this point? Okay. All right. So I thank you all for your time. Let me. I will close with this. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. This process is no different than a lot of the other processes I've been involved in. When you're dealing with these large projects, particularly replacement projects where you have grant money, there are necessary checks and balances in place from the funding agencies, in this case the federal government, to make sure that the money spent, and Chelsea Klein spoke to that, in the right manner. So my hope is that you will understand that this is not going to happen with the snap of a finger. If you look at some of the other past hurricanes, literally, years later, there has just been kind of a reckoning or an update of some of the things that were impacted or destroyed. So the process may be long, but my comment to you and my encouragement to all of you, don't give up. Just stay engaged with it, and you will get to that new Stanley White Recreation Facility, wherever it is. You'll get what you deserve, not what you need, but what the community deserves. So thank you all. We'll be here for a bit. If you have any other comments, just please let us know. But that concludes the presentation portion of the meeting this evening.